This conference will now be recorded.
Figure out a way to do this streaming.
It's not working?
I'm not doing it on here because those just hear me talking really loud and I wanted to be able to catch the conversation because I'm like the least important person on the board that is,
Would it help if she sits next to you?
I can come over there.
Sorry.
I'm not getting the slides.
not getting the slides.
Got 'em.
Hey everybody, welcome. Thank you all for being here for the March COC Governance Board. Everybody's official now. There's no kind of murkiness on who is and isn't a board member. So thank you all for the patience. Thank you all for just giving the community confidence in the process through the governance charter and everything. So we have a lot to talk about. Hopefully there'll be some good conversations. If you need Wi-Fi, I believe the password is up there. OC Cares 14, right? Is connection to the Wi-Fi. Thank you all online who are joining online. We'll be having the slides shared briefly online. We have them in person here and we're working to get them shared online as well. And we have this meeting being recorded. So here's our meeting and ground rules. We'll encourage everybody to participate. This is this isn't a public discussion. This is a public discussion, not a debate necessarily. I don't think there's going to be a lot of high energy or hot topic items. There's a few governance things talking about our meeting with HUD, what the next steps are for the board, and going over some of the work that we've already done. And there is one voting item. So if I call your name and you are online, if you can just speak up or say here as well, just so. Is John here from the city? Or representation from the city? Okay. We got David here. Priscilla here. Andra. Richard here. Can you count? So we had to sit up for so see if we have quorum over here. Wendy. Ann. Natalie. Nicole.
No, she's not here.
Danielle. Welcome back.
I kept coming in here. I haven't been here in like 2 years, bro.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome from your vacation. Is it Cheryl? Cheryl?
Yeah.
Stephen? Here. Kathy?
Here.
Kelsey? She's not gonna be here, she emailed me. Barkley? Here. Melody?
Here.
Samantha? Mary? Johnny? And DeCorba.
I'm present.
Okay, so I've got that's 10. I gotta see who's online.
10. Let's see if we have anybody online. Okay, so quorum is at 11 for the voting item, which is 50% plus 1. We have 20, as you can see, there's 20. So we do need 11. Hopefully somebody will pop in before the voting item for the HMIS policies and procedures. Our agenda today, we'll briefly discuss the amended, oh, John's here.
Okay.
Yeah, we got quorum.
Right on cue.
Perfect timing, John. Thank you. We had the NC governance charter. We'll briefly discuss that passed at the March 13th membership meeting. We have the board retreat and onboarding, which will be done with HUD TA. Will help facilitate that. Governance board positions. And then we have a vote on HMIS policies and procedures, and then some community updates as well. Are there any questions on the agenda? Okay. This is just a quick overview. The amended charter did pass at the March 13th COC membership meeting. I know a lot of y'all were on there. Thank you all so much for just encouraging participation in that meeting. Just a recap of that, the language added to the governance charter talked about the amendment process prior to the annual review. The COC membership meeting dates and times and locations are going to be posted in advance from 5 business days to 10 business days. And then the big one is clearing up the election process of the COC governance board members. So that passed on March 13th, and then immediately we went into the governance board vote for system providers and homelessness provider COC board membership. So the roll call slide is our full board. We have 20 slots. Quorum going forward will be 11. So that'll be 50% plus 1 is so 11 will be quorum. So welcome to the board. Cal, can we give ourselves a round of applause that we finally got this done? Hey, welcome. We are in compliance now with HUD. We can check everything off on our collaborative application, and we're ready to. I think we're all ready to get down to do some good work. Speaking of which, the governance board retreat. Tracy will be sending out a doodle poll to see which date works for you all. We are looking at this most of the day for this event. So we'd like to start around 9:30. Space and location TBD until I talk to Kathy. To see if we can maybe use here. I'm not sure if we can't use here. I know our board chair is maybe working on some space as well for the partnership board chair. It's working on some space that we could use. But we are looking at April 11th and 12th, which is a Monday and Tuesday.
Tuesday and Wednesday.
Tuesday and Wednesday, sorry. Just one of these dates, by the way. I think the 10th is Easter Monday. And then if those dates are not good, because if you need more of advance notice, April 24th. Whitney, our HUD TA rep for our COC, will be facilitating this board retreat. We're going to talk about the charter work for the board. If y'all were on the board in 2021, 2022, this process has been done before. We're looking at the goals for 2023 of the board. What is the vision? What are our gaps in the community? And what's the work that the board is choosing to take on in 2023? And that is something that there's a lot to do. We probably can't do everything this year, but there'll be a good prioritization of what we want to focus on this year with our continuum of care. In addition, there will be an onboarding process as well. Just a reminder of the board responsibilities, what the board is here to do, and how the board functions, and then which kind of coincides with the role of the COC board. With that, there will be discussion about those positions that were sent out as well. In our charter, there dictates 2 positions. We brought in a third, which is a secretary. It's not in our charter, but we could, if the board decides to go this route, this is y'all's decision. If we want that third secretary for record keeping and those types of things, we can. It was actually recommended by HUD TA to bring in that third role of the board as well. I did send out all those job descriptions. We would like to vote on those prior or on the April meeting, but after the board retreat. So there's a clear understanding that any questions can be asked, and there's kind of that process of just understanding what those roles are instead of just rushing into a vote. Does anybody have any questions on the board retreat or any comments?
The dates are available.
Okay,
I
thank
won't
you.
be here the week of the 24th, but somebody else can make arrangements for you guys.
Okay. I am asking if I can have maybe 1 or 2 board members help myself and the HUD TA plan this retreat. What I say is it's just talking about the agenda, what we want to really focus on. They're not talking about goal setting. That's what we're going to do as a whole group, but more so plan the day and how this is going to kind of flow this day, this board retreat, and just prioritizing the topics and suggestions on with HUD TA on how this board retreat will look. Do I have any volunteers that would like to help myself with that and our HUD TA rep? Stephen?
Uh-huh.
Stephen, Danielle, thank you. Okay, I will send you both of y'all an email, with, Whitney and myself on it, and we can get together and start, planning that. So just to recap, a doodle poll will go out today, to figure out which date it is, and then we'll start planning that. And thank you, Kathy, for making those available. So it'll be here, in person. We'd like to do it in person. I'm working on getting lunch and everything provided, so,
So I'd say that this, just quickly, so it's a smaller group and this room would be ideal, I would think, for a
Mhm.
smaller group. There is one event that's like a guest event in here, I think on the 11th. I can try to check and see if we can move that, but just FYI.
yeah, so if we have full participation, plus, we would have about 22 to 23 people. So it'll be the full board for the board retreat. If we have full participation, myself, and then maybe one or two other staff in the partnership. Whitney will be, she's in Connecticut, so she'll be, we'll virtual stream her in. But this is going to be a working session. I like, what you were saying is having, sharp paper up on the walls, be able to really brainstorm and plan out the work for that, for the year. So it's not you're not going to be listening to Whitney talk the whole time. It's going to be a lot of work and a lot of this group doing a lot of the planning and design of the COC work.
So I'm gonna go ahead and just reserve the other room because this is not close to 22, so
Yeah.
we're gonna want a bigger space, I think. I'll just put a hold on the room.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, for doing that. The governance board's positions, like I said, board chair, vice chair, the secretary, those positions, job descriptions have been sent out. According to our charter, there are some responsibilities for the board chair and vice chair. The secretary one is the one that's not in our charter, but with the help from Jen and HUD TA, we put together a job description. And obviously those can change. That's not set in stone. It's all on feedback that we need these positions to entail, that we can add those as well. Applications for the position can be sent to coc@partnershipwake.org. So even prior to the retreat, if you read over and you are interested, there is a section at the bottom of each application. Please, I encourage y'all to apply. We will hold a vote, on the April board meeting, if everybody's at a clear understanding of those positions. If we need more time, if there's a little unsureness on those positions, we can always push that back. However, I know, we're still going to function and do work, whether these positions are in place this time next month or not. But I would like to start a lot of the governance of this and the work of this committee to be done by the governance board with the partnership in the advisory capacity, as it should be. Are there any questions on that? Okay. All right, we'll get through all of the to-do stuff for the board. So what was sent out, I think it was sent out last month, I just sent it out again in this board meeting packet, was we do have one voting item, and that is the HMIS policies and procedures. This has gone through myself with HUD TA, did the first initial draft, and then we'll send to the data advisory committee probably in October or November to really look at, added certain things. These next couple of slides here is what the data advisory committee, some of the questions that they had, what was talked about, and some of the solutions from the committee for the HMIS policies and procedures to be adopted by the COC. This is something that if you have this document up, if y'all looked at it and saw certain questions, we can bring up the full document and actually go to the line item that if you have questions on to discuss them. But this is something that we are asking the board to vote on for adoption for our COC about our HMIS software and the policies and procedures around them. Vanessa is on call online. So Vanessa, if you have anything that you'd like to chime in for, I'm just going to kind of cover the slides. And if you want to just chime in, feel free to as well.
Awesome, will do. Thank you.
right, so how frequently will the HMS policies and procedures be reviewed by the governance board? The committee talked about reviews on even years. So every even year, so 2024 would be the next review, unless prompted by an external event. So if there's like some type of standard that changes that we need immediate review, then they'll be reviewed immediately. Verbal ROI was something that was talked about, must be switched to 30 days. Right now, the verbal standard for clarity was a year. It was 30 days with the old software. Kind of the software itself switched it to a year. We're switching it back to the 30-day for the verbal ROI, just to make sure that everybody's privacy is protected. And we are in ROIs are not a HUD compliant thing. This is what we feel like is best for our COC.
Does that affect like Claire, the referrals to shelter and stuff? So that means
No.
Okay.
In Clarity, the ROI does not drive visibility.
Okay.
That is different from our old system. We are completely open sharing. Now you can switch a client to private and it'll lock them down just to that agency.
Yeah, because I think the most, if anyone, that would affect the access site referrals.
Yep. So there's going to be a training requirement for privacy training every year as a refresher. We'll be rolling that out in July.
I do have a question about that one, sorry, as well. Does Clarity have the functionality to track when people are, each user's re-upped on their training, or is that, I know in the policies and procedures, it says that the agency administrator will keep track of that, but it'd be nice if it's in the database.
Yeah, so what's going to happen is for the refresher, it's actually going to be on your login screen after a year, and you actually can't get into the software until you go through the refresher, and you have to assign that you've done it and everything, so it's going to be automatic like that. So after you've been in it for a year, once you sign in, you'll be hit with that privacy statement talking about the expectations. You have to sign to actually access the HMIS software, or you're locked out. So include copies of the required documents and the policies and procedures which were added to this policies and procedures, changing visibility group language to reflect new sharing environment, and update data quality plan. So all of that is listed in that document that the board was sent with the policies and procedures. So some other questions that came up is, are we still using agency administrator structure? And yes, right now the committee is determining each agency the responsibility for designating a single point of contact.
Sorry, can you progress the slide? Thank you.
I've already started contacting agencies to find that one point of contact, and the DAC is developing out another license level in HMIS for an agency administrator. This will have customer report building and some other features that the DAC is looking at that we'd like to roll out into the community.
Will they include like being able to update your program stuff, or will that still?
That's a great question. We're trying to give as much control to the agency as we can. So that's kind of, and I say that that's what I'm really, something, as long as it doesn't mess up our HUD requirements, you know, if it's adding like a case note category and those types of things and adding goals, I want that case management control to the agency. The HUD control, the HUD universal data elements and all that will stay with the system admins, but it's more of that to help case management happen easier. We can delegate that out to the agencies to make it customized. We can, that's why we're going each one, and we're really trying to see how this will flow with our whole COC. So we'll have more information on that once that license level gets rolled out. All right, so the time frame or frequency of routine audits. So system administrator will notify agency administrator of issues related to the data collection, quality, or reporting. Administrators must properly address these errors within 10 to 15 business days, unless otherwise agreed upon by system admin or agency administrator. For issues of non-compliance, agency administrators have 5 business days to rectify the issues. If the issue persists beyond 30 days, the system administrator may take action to suspend or terminate HMIS licenses. Let me say, we put this in here. From my perspective, we're going to work with everybody. Like, it's not like we're going to say, you are out of compliance and you don't hear anything, and then bam, day 31, it's gone. It's not going to be like that. But there wasn't any language on here, and we wanted to kind of have something in writing in case HUD comes back and say, hey, what's your plan?
Can I add as well, that when we think non-compliance, think like sharing passwords, a lot like the pieces that make our system HIPAA compliant. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. We're not talking 5 days to rectify like a data quality issue. That's not the same as non-compliance. And it should be pretty articulated in the document.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, these are kind of security breaches and those types of things that we're trying to talking about here.
I do have one more comment, sorry. Vanessa, good work with you and your team. It's super thorough, I think. The one question I had, can we get like a checklist to agency administrators or to system, whatever staff of things that will be included in the audit, maybe more abbreviated than this form? Is that super helpful?
Yeah.
In the
Absolutely.
policies and procedures, there is a checklist for agency administrators of documents that are required or will be audited. Are you looking for something a little bit different?
Which part is it?
Yeah, hold on a second. I'm gonna pull up the policies and procedures. Just 1 second. And if you want to, you're welcome to keep going, Eric, while I pull up the checklist.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I have it up here on the in the in-person as well if we need to.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, do you know what page it's on by chance?
I want to say page 20.
Here you go. Yep, it is number 7. Well, let's see.
Yeah, it should be on page 20, agency administrator requirement.
Right here. So page 20, Stephen, is where we'll be on, and it'll have kind of the role and requirement.
That's what you wanted to be a little more succinct, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think like more, it'd just be helpful, I think, like the checklist of like making sure you have the privacy standards posted in each office, you know, like and it's all included in here, but I think just something a little more abbreviated that you'd be able to give.
Like the appendix on the last page,
Yeah.
26, that has all the contract agreements filed. They have the check boxes that are documents.
Absolutely, and we can make like a one-sheeter that's kind of a little more user-friendly.
No, that's good right there on 26, sorry.
On 26.
Yeah, I think I could give that to all staff to that part too.
Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Perfect, thank you guys.
All right, I don't remember which bullet point we are at, but I'm gonna start at the second one from the bottom. System administrators must complete agency audits at least once annually, specified by the DAC. The DAC will conduct system audits on odd years, and that's the DAC conducting the audit on the odd years. Will develop a set of questions and protocols for sampling data. Now, some of this isn't developed yet, but we know that it's in the policies and procedures that this type of work needs to be done and starting to develop now so we can be in compliance with this document. So I do want to be transparent about that. Like the things that we say we're going to do, we still have to develop out, but now we have a deadline and a structure to develop out that flow of work. Okay. Vanessa, is there anything critical that we want to cover? Because I don't know if reading this bullet by bullet, but I did want to give you a chance to chime in on, on anything else. I have the slides up for the next slides. If anybody has any questions, a lot of this is going to be, talking about the data quality, correcting the data, the ROI. Does the board have any questions about this document? I'd be happy to go through it, continue to go through it thoroughly, but I do want to make sure that the board fully understands the policy and procedure and clear up any.
Hey, Eric.
Yes.
Sorry, I just dropped from the meeting by accident. That last bullet point, I just wanted to point out, it said what time frame is expected for technical assistance and reporting turnaround from the HMIS team. And we purposely did not answer that because we know that we're rethinking the capacity of the partnership. And so as soon as we know what staffing will look like and what they are, what capacity they'll have, we will set that expectation for the community.
Awesome.
For now, we're just kind of doing our best.
Yeah, and that's something we internally at the partnership, we recognize that we will have those standards out there for the community, and we'll work with the DAC on developing those. I think a good time frame, Vanessa, would be this summer. We would have something in place pretty solid.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great.
So a lot of this is just how do we do certain things? How do we do aliases? How do we do a lot of street outreach workers might not have a client name but need to enter them in street outreach. So how do we do that? How do we capture that client's information? So this document will really guide the community and the programs into these types of navigating these tricky questions.
This is also really important for serving clients who identify as non-binary or transgender. It's in a trauma-informed environment, prudent to use their names that they present with rather than dead names or identifying them outside of how they would like to be seen. So that's also why we have this language. But we understand the need to make sure that the information you have is appropriate for getting them housing. So if they haven't legally been able to change their name or something along those lines, we can have the service provider informed while also respecting that client's identity.
Thank you.
So I have a quick question related to that. Is there anywhere in the database, it's not related to this document, but just made me think, do we have anywhere in the database where we have pronouns that people choose to use?
I don't think so right now. There are a new set of HUD, the 2024 data standards that are coming out, that I can see if those are going to be added as well. I was in a meeting a couple months ago about the data standards, about what they're talking, and so that was a big topic of discussion. I don't know if that's been officially adopted. So 2024 is when HUD will release the new UDE's data standards, and that is a possibility that will be added.
For now, it's also really important that in HMIS, when we select gender, it is related to gender identity, not biological sex. So that is the HUD definition when you're answering that gender question. I know that gender is not always related to pronouns, but it is I think a good reminder that that's what we're up to.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I believe this is the last slide. Yep. On this one is just talking about question needed more information that were discussed. HMIS configuration can be set up as non-HIPAA compliant. Do we want to explicitly write that the COC will ensure our HMIS completion is HIPAA compliant? And then we're talking about our COC agrees upon to operate HMIS according to HIPAA compliance. I feel like that's just the HIPAA compliance is just another level. It's not required that we do it. But we just want to operate with the data sharing to be HIPAA compliant as well. We received from BitFocus the data backup disaster recovery plan. So if something happens, BitFocus does have a backup of all of our information in HMIS that they can retrieve and re-upload for us. That does not live at the partnership, that lives with our vendor. Yes.
So are we providing photos of individuals?
We can be. It's not required that we have photos, but some of our shelter transitional housing projects can have a client's photo in HMIS for an ID card printout as well. And then the last one is talking about unnamed clients. Clarity recommends using a unique identifier with client profile screen to create, to prevent duplicates. So that's something that it's more from the clarity recommendation. Okay. Are there any questions before we go into a vote? All right, so we are voting to adopt the document that was sent out. This was just a brief recap for our NC 507 COC HMIS policies and procedures. All those in favor, since all the board members here are in person, say yes. Or aye or aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, it passed.
I did have a question.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Just curious, is this gonna be another vote when it's complete?
Will this be another vote when it's complete? Do we want to send this back to them maybe later on this summer to vote with additional information, Vanessa?
With the additional information, yes. So it would be voted, it will be,
or do we want to wait for the review of it? I think it's in odd years or even years.
I think we want to avoid as much as possible individual amendments. We would like some solid reviews because we don't want to continually be tweaking it. But I do think a mid-year small level of updates like outlining the technical assistance timelines would be appropriate. So let's shoot for we'll say July is mid-year for any amendments, but in general, the full review will be on even years.
And as a partnership, once those standards are in place about the technical assistance, we'll abide by them when, as soon as they are adopted by the DAC, regardless of the board vote when that happens.
Do we think, is that for those smaller changes, is it, and this is a governance board question, does this need to go to the full board, or does the DAC have the authority to make the adjustments and then share those changes? Is there a preference or a thought?
Does it lay that out?
I don't think it lays it out in the policies and procedures on what the process is necessarily.
It doesn't.
It seems like it'd be consistent since we're voting on changes now for us to vote again, but.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm perfectly fine with that. We'll come back mid-year with any smaller tweaks to the policies and procedures, and then agree to do a full review in January of next year.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Vanessa, Kathy, and those on the DAC for y'all's work on this.
Yeah, really great work. Thanks, y'all.
Okay, we're gonna go into partnership announcements. I'm gonna give it over to Robin.
Hey everyone, it's Robin with the Access Hub. And so I just have the one slide. And so, from the slide, it's very obvious that we don't have people calling for just any coordinated entry. That we're not just having people who are in some type of defined homelessness crisis. So we have people that are calling about all things housing. We have people calling all things social services related, human services related, which is fantastic, that people have somewhere to call. But I mean, I think it's obvious how that could be very challenging for the Access Hub. The Access Hub was designed to only be doing coordinated entry. And so from that graph, you see that was only 400 people last month. And so it just seems like there's always been this disconnect between what the Access Hub is and what we want the Access Hub to be. And so because of that, it just always seems as if, the goalposts are moving as far as what the expectations are, for the Access Hub. So anyway, so from that pie chart, we can see that out of the 80% of non-coordinated entry calls, most of them are calling needing some type of prevention, rental assistance, things along those lines. But they're not able to be referred anywhere because they're not within that 21-day window of having to leave their residence. I know that we've all talked about diversion, and I know that we can tailor what diversion is and what it means to the community. And when I think diversion, I think of someone who's calling into the Access Hub who isn't eligible for coordinated entry, but without some sort of short-term intervention, they are going to be eligible for coordinated entry, which is not what we want. And so this idea of diversion is something that, we want to move forward with. I know that we capture this data somewhere in HMIS, but what I would like to do is have a team of us go out to the shelters, interview people who are there and ask them, hey, tell us about what the few weeks look like before you came into shelter. I feel like we'll start hearing the same stories. And then once we have an idea of what diversion looks like or who would benefit from diversion, then we can really target our diversion efforts. Obviously, we don't need to figure this out now, but I do want to pass that along, but that is the sentiment of the Access Hub, is that, we aren't fixated on how many calls we answer, how many calls we don't answer, voicemails we don't call back. I think that it's important for me to let you all know that we are, want to meet the need of the community, and we think that some type of diversion does that versus answering, thousands of calls.
So what do we do with those calls that are not in that 21-day window?
Can you zoom in, Tracy, on the bottom?
So what do we do
Yeah,
with those calls?
Yeah, so if they're not eligible for
doing it.
Our staff is talking with them about maybe this might be an option, that might be an option, like problem solving, but yeah, there's nowhere really to refer.
I'm trying to see.
Every nonprofit, every church right now has that capacity, and so there's not really any one place we can send people to for rental assistance or any type of prevention that are outside that 21-day window.
So is the idea around looking toward more diversion work or trying to figure that out, would that address the needs of this bigger blue section of people who are calling? Or do we need to figure out how to, do we have to live with all the folks who call? Is our message and our access line appropriately kind of advertised throughout the community, and we get what we get, and then we have to figure out how to navigate through that. I guess that's a question. So can we improve our advertising of the line, or do we just need to work on how to manage the calls that are coming in?
Yeah, so I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I feel like there's a way that we can manage the calls that are coming in, and that's what I would prefer to do. Like I said, I think it's great that people have somewhere that they can call and talk with someone. But yeah, I think we do need to make some adjustments as far as people that we're not able to help right now, getting them the service.
I think a couple suggestions would be maybe the simple question, just asking how they heard about the Access Hub, because then we can target more education around what is appropriate referrals and what's not. It is hard because if they're calling for prevention services, they're calling for rental assistance. And then once you give a client one message, it doesn't matter necessarily how we've all seen that, how you target it. Once they hear this is a housing call line, it just opens up to all forms of what that is. But I do think if you're asking that question and seeing that particular agencies are referring inappropriate referrals, I do think you can help do more education processes on the agencies to do more of the screening prior to you having to do all of that. I think that'd be helpful. Another suggestion is, we have the diversion partners now, so how do we get more upstream with those diversion partners, partnering with you all, being able to divert people from needing the call center, I guess.
Robin, I can follow up with you.
I have a thought as well, if I could. Sorry, there's no way for me to raise my hand.
Just a second.
John is a.
Okay.
I was just saying, I'll follow up offline with Robin. We have 2 contracts right now with agencies to do diversion work and see how we could maybe.
Thank you.
You've got obviously a 211, and you've got the agencies that have money through FSP for rental assistance.
Yeah.
Who aren't necessarily locally trained people though too, and just send referrals. We get calls all the time for a shelter that's for various things that we don't even do anymore through some of those screening.
Well, they would need to be updated to the current EFSP, not people that got funded in phase 36 or 37, but people that got funded in phase 39, or people got funded through the ARPA, as opposed to this is a potential diversion.
Okay, Vanessa.
I actually realize this is too granular, but I do think there is some information that already exists within our system about how people arrive at the Access Hub. Like I do, but I have some just like logistical questions because we could do some qualitative review of the screenings to see like trends and themes. But I don't want to, we don't need to get into the logistics here, but and I would also, my second thought is I want us to be as cognizant as we can around not creating another step to diversion, like by another referral out. So just if we can think about how that exists or co-locates with the Access Hub or with the single call line, I think that might be more trauma informed and supportive of folks and their needs.
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, how I imagine it, if I had it my way, someone was having some type of like perceived housing crisis, they would call the Access Hub, and like one of three things would happen. Either, it's something that the Access Hub can handle, and we take care of the call. They are eligible for coordinated entry, so we put that referral in. But then the third option is, they are eligible for some type of like diversion, whatever that means. And so I imagine like, 2 or 3 like social workers, case managers, mediators, I don't know, on staff who would have like a caseload to provide that short-term intervention for the people that we refer to.
I think our ultimate goal as a partnership is if a $100 pair of work boots will prevent somebody from losing a job and falling into homelessness, have the Access Hub catch that and resolve that before it even comes to the providers. Because once they fall into homelessness, it takes up a shelter bed, and then it takes up a lot more resources where a bus ticket out of the community to a family member or something like that is something that I believe one of our goals at the partnership is to evolve into a kind of an Access Hub and with diversion specialists as well.
Right. And I do think though that it should, like the services we provide, like still fall under that umbrella of like housing. I mean, I get what you're saying about the work boots and things like that, but then wow, it will really become like everything to everyone.
So like, to Eric's point, if someone does call you guys and they're like, hey, we need a bus ticket, or I need a bus ticket back to my family, because I came here for whatever reason, need a bus ticket so I can go back home and have permanent housing. Are you guys aware of agencies that will do that?
Yeah, I mean, I know that there's some agencies that provide what we call like traveler's aid, but I encourage people to call 211 for them to give them that information. I don't like giving direct contact numbers to people who are, seeking some type of service. I don't even know if they still offer that service, so I have to go back around there.
Well, I only say that because recently we've had instances of people coming and we've been able to divert them with bus tickets, plane tickets. So I guess it's just good information to have, and maybe some communication or coordination between the Access Hub and different agencies to kind of see how we can work together to make that happen, so that they're not, cycling through the system and waiting 3 weeks just to get to the shelter to find out that they can go home.
Well, Ian. So I was just gonna say, like, I think that, I agree with everything that's been said, so I think that, your example is great, like all of us should be working on diversion in all of our programs if you're providing, services for people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk. And I think this speaks to, like, from the governance board's purview, I think it speaks to one of the priorities that we need to put on our list. I'm guessing that in our retreat, we will begin to establish these are the things that we want to focus our energy on. And I think education to the community and to all of the providers on what diversion is, providing additional kind of like, how can diversion work within the Access Hub? Like, I think all of those things seem to be, that's good work for us to do. So, I mean, I don't know if we can solve it necessarily today, but I really think that these are the kind of things that I hope as we become a more solidified board, we intentionally choose to take up and prioritize.
Absolutely.
I don't have to go into too much detail, and David and Vanessa can correct me where I go wrong, but with Bridge to Home funding, a lot of our agencies are able to do a lot of new things now. So I would much rather you call me and tell me, hey, we have a family who needs transportation assistance to go back to Chicago. We're going to open a referral to shelter for them anyways with it. And then maybe I can resolve it from even becoming necessarily an open referral. It does get a little tricky on how we bill for that and stuff, but we can figure that out on our end. But if we have an open referral, we're able to provide some of those assistance for the families. And I think pretty much now most of any shelter has that. So it would just be like, oh, this is a single woman, I'm gonna call these shelters and say, hey, can you use your Bridge to Home funding to help provide transportation for this before we send?
But this is exactly what we're finding. Stephen is dead on. It's like by the time a shelter gets to their referrals and they have an opening, they call that person. And then the Bridge to Home agencies are finding that they can divert this person, which is generally like, you know, the definition when someone's at the front door of your shelter, that's diversion. If you can avoid having them come in for the night. And so they will divert that person when they can, but it's not till much later, right? Not everyone is able to get to a referral within 24 hours. And so it's much further down the line than when someone calls the access.
And then we're alleviating the whole system by
turning off that fire hose.
all those people from even needing to be an open referral. I mean,
Exactly. That's part of it. It is part of that, like in my mind, I think it's making sure that we're all kind of approaching that in a similar fashion, right? So the access of it saying, oh, like, have you thought about this and maybe we can do this? And so they're approaching them from a diversion standpoint, right? You didn't divert, but you ended up sending a referral to Stephen, and Stephen gets to you and he says, tell me what's going on again, and let me double check that. And could we do this instead of taking you into our shelter? And he actually, maybe something's changed in between, or maybe he thought of something new, but a diversion could happen, like it could happen here, it could happen here, or we just open up for the service and we help them find housing. So like if we're all kind of like focused in that same direction, we seize any opportunity as it presents itself.
this is exciting.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that, you know, Robin, something that we can work on is what do we need to make that diversion conversation successful at our level that then we can plug in to everybody receiving city diversion or Bridge to Home funding to actually receive the diversion service. So we're not bridging that gap. So it's not 6 weeks until you get to the referral to find out that they can be diverted. It's they can be diverted today. Here are our 8 agencies that receive Bridge to Home funding. Which one is like, can you go to get that diversion service that's nearby? And then we facilitate that bridge to that agency. I think that can be doable. I would have to talk with Robin on what we would need to do to make sure that those diversion conversations are happening. Because there is a capacity issue there. I mean, when we always have someone on hold, it's hard to have a long-term diversion conversation.
Well, it does kind of speak to, like, as we're kind of working through things, figuring out what you need to evolve into what we like, is what we want you to let us know, so we can try to build together to kind of create optimal.
And we are having those conversations, but with HUD internally as well. So I think that we're very optimistic with this community when it comes to diversion and rapid exits, those types of things.
My last thought.
Hold on.
Evolving, because that's exactly what we need to do, because right now we are operating as like a call center, but we are able and have been doing so much more than that.
Go ahead, Vanessa, sorry, and also.
Okay. My last thought is just, I think Oak City Cares is a really great example because they are also funded for diversion and they don't offer like, you know, they're not doing shelter, rapid rehousing, or any particular intervention. And so the people who work with our care coordinators can often find themselves getting diverted because through the flexible financial assistance that they have. And I think if we take what Oak City Cares is doing and maybe can imagine that forward into the Access Hub or what that looks like, I think we might want to look at Oak City Cares as that example, because they're doing great. They're blowing right through all their diversion funding, and it's absolutely things that we would imagine would be diversion related. So just something to think about.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know from the partnership standpoint, I don't feel like it's such a big jump to where we want to be. Like, that's not a big hurdle. We're not looking up a huge mountain. Like, I don't know how we're going to get there. I think we can get there. Just tweaking some things, a little bit more capacity. And then there's communication with those that are receiving the flex spending funding. We can get some of that low hanging fruit pretty quickly with that.
Can I ask a question about, is there a list of all the agencies that people they need support? If we send them to, because right now, at the Housing Authority, everything goes to, what we can't help with, we send them to the Access Hub to call. And it is many different things, but is there a list or something
I know,
available?
do you have a pretty good list of like shelter, like pantries and all that other stuff that,
But that's not really gonna help though, because we only take it through the Access Hub. So like, even if any other agency sent me anyone, I'd be like, gotta go to the Access Hub.
But we have a list of resources that aren't even plugged in with the Access Hub that we just community resource list. Is that what kind of you're looking for? Regardless if they have to go through the Access Hub or not, right?
I'm just saying like shelter, anything
Yeah.
through the Bridge to Home funding, any of that stuff would need to come through the Access Hub. Like we get calls all the time for like financial assistance, we don't do.
Yeah, but that Bridge to Home stuff, we can like,
Burdens us.
I'm gonna.
But if they're in the HMIS system, they have a profile, they're in the system.
Or you guys define financial assistance, like rental assistance, or utility, that stuff, you guys not doing that?
What were you saying?
If they have an HMIS ID, then they potentially could have an open referral from other agencies.
Well, I mean, if they're not referring for diversion, they're referring for, if they're in the system, in our HMIS system, we should be able to work with them, because not all services are gonna come. It's like she's saying, like, they're calling for all these things and there's really nowhere to direct them to specifically as of now. So if they're in the system.
Yeah.
they work with them.
We'll work on building that diversion express lane through the Access Hub. I think that's what we need, is just getting those diversion out to those those agencies
Well,
quickly.
we would just need to figure out the granular stuff of it, because I'm like, if I don't have an open referral, Vanessa and David could help me with this, but I don't know how I'd like be able to offer Bridge to Home funding that we have if it wasn't someone who was like referred to our shelter that we're permitting from coming in our specific shelter. Does that make sense?
Right, so I'm speaking to like, with the drop shelter, like, that's where a lot of our current diversion has been coming from. They don't get referred to the drop shelter. They just like show up.
Well, Oak City Cares doesn't have an open shelter referral to use diversion funding.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
No, we just enroll them in
Diversion's
our
just
care
services.
coordination
Right.
program and then do the assessment, and as part of that, if we identify that need, we use that funding.
Yeah.
I mean, as a funder, is that okay? Like,
You don't need a referral.
you don't require that open shelter referral for that Bridge to Home diversion funding, do you?
It's baked into the
That's
services
correct.
that's already at the agency.
So I mean, but I do feel like that, as we're talking through this, I do feel like that and it might can be shorter than we expect, but I think that we're all thinking that we'd like the Access Hub to have like the staff time ability and the flexible financial assistance to provide that for those who they encounter. At least that's my imagination, that there's some kind of like diversion that can happen at the Access Hub level. And then there's still diversion opportunities at all the other kind of like points. And that's why Bridge to Home has that funding, because like, we get sent folks to the shelter all the time, and we're kind of like, well, this is how many people are on the list to come to the shelter. Is there something else we might could do to help you get off the street? And, you know, but you can't deliver that message at the Access Hub, right? I mean, you can try to, but like, when the person is kind of now going to the shelter and trying to like access the services that they think they need or what are most appropriate, and it seems a little more difficult or more time consuming than is possible, then it really encourages you to dig deeper to try to think, is there something else that we can do? And every time we can dig a little deeper and find something, it means we don't have to open them to the shelter and there's no one else on the waiting list, because we can solve that there, not send them back to the Access Hub and not send them to the Oak City Cares, but just kind of provide that solution. And I think that's the dream that I have for all the agencies to be able to do, including the Access Hub.
Absolutely. And that's right up what NAEH was saying, is diversion happens at every level, every level. And I think this is great for us to add to that retreat, that board retreat, on how we want to I think we have diversion implemented across the COC, but how do we want to fully implement it at every level? Is something that this board can develop a plan around. Are y'all good if we move to the next slide?
Oh, just real quick,
Great
so
conversation,
we are open now from 8 to 8, and that's been going really well.
So, okay, that is
Yeah,
done deal,
so,
done, going on.
yeah, and so we've, yeah, I mean, not tons of phone calls, but that's what we expected until we like fully launched to make sure this thing's gonna work, and we're getting back to all of our voicemails the same day, so it's working exactly like we thought. So
I referred to somebody last night, and they called me after 5 and said, you got till 8. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob. Oh, hold on. Back up.
How many agencies are we working altogether?
Do they accept and continue? Will come up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
How many agencies providing different types of services?
28. 28, too close, yeah, 28 right now. Okay, by name list, Tracy.
Okay, so this is something that I've been working on the side, on top of everything else. So this is our current by name list as of this week. We currently have 293 households on the list, which is about 510 people. And this shows the breakdown of whether or not they're chronic, non-chronic, family, singles, and where this information is all pulling in from. So the agencies at the bottom. And also is showing whether or not they're rapid rehousing, emergency shelter, or street outreach.
Will it show up there if they was referred by the hub?
It will not show where they were referred to by. I haven't pulled that stuff into it, but I mean, I could. Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
He exited out of it.
Okay. Can we go to the next slide?
Sure. I'm waiting for mine to load. If it will.
Online it's loading, but we have it in person here, so.
Yeah. So this slide, whenever it loads up on mine, this is shows the program. So it's broken down by program, whether or not it's emergency shelter, transitional housing, rapid rehousing. Shows the agencies, how many people are in those particular programs, and the average length of time in these programs for each person. So we can see how it fluctuates.
Do it show if they are re-entering the program? Do have that right there? I have my glasses on.
No, it's okay. It's not on this one, no. I do have another slide on the dashboard. I don't think I included it in this. That does show their exits, so people's exits within the last 30 days and where they've exited to, whether or not it's permanent housing or back to homelessness. And I don't know why it's not showing up here.
Are we able to get an email with this? Because I can't read.
Yeah, I have. So
Because I'd love to see this.
it is live and it is interactive, so you can click on the different pieces and see where they correlate. I presented it during our case conferencing this morning. And yes, I do have a link for it and I can send that out.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for those online that were not able to see it. I don't know why it's not loading here.
Yeah, we'll send out in the.
Yeah, I can send out that link
the,
for it.
the post-meeting packet link. Okay, have the next slide up, Tracy.
Oh, this is the one that I was talking about. This one is the exits. So this shows, the coordinated entry is still on there. I thought I had filtered that one out. But this shows how many households had been exited within the last 30 days, which is 336. But again, this is also including coordinated entry. And it also shows where they were exited to, whether or not it was permanent housing, temporary housing, or back to homelessness. There's the, okay, for those of you online, this is the length of stay. And then this is the one that we're looking at now, which is exits. Okay. And again, like I said, this is all interactive. So if you click on the chronic, yeah, you can click on the chronic, on the red. Yep, just once. Okay, and then it shows you how the breakdown is at the bottom. So it shows that there was 42 people that were exited that were chronic, and the average length of stay for those people was 39 days. And then where most of them exited to, it looks like a majority of the ones that exited that were considered chronic were from the emergency shelter, and it says other. So this is also another really, really good example of why the data in HMIS is very important to be accurate and up to date, because, you know, we want this to look more like we had more people who exited to permanent housing or not other.
So there were 42 chronic clients who exited our homeless delivery system, is that right?
In the last 30 days, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then these would be the where they exited to?
Yes. Yes. And there was 19 who exited from the shelter to other.
Now, is there a way, I know I'm going back a slide, but is there a way, I saw the slide that said there were currently 500 individuals, 300 households who were currently on the by name list, right?
Yeah, that's the first slide, yes.
Yeah, that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and is there, I can't read the bottom either, so I'm gonna ask questions. So is of the 293 households that are on the by name list, is the graph showing us how many are waiting for a particular service?
No, that shows where they are located.
So do we know, like for the 293, how many households we feel like rapid rehousing is the intervention that they need and they're waiting for that intervention?
So we can't really see that from this. This is where I would pull up my actual by name list and break it down into each client, because it shows that there are 70 people who are on the list who have a VI-SPDAT score, and then based on that and the other
because
criteria.
that's what the rapid rehousing. And this doesn't include this is just rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing. Is there another reason you'd be on the by name list?
Vouchers.
The mainstream vouchers or the special vouchers in the mainstream population world, right?
Coordinated entry.
Yeah, coordinated entry.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. So
PHP.
are those 293 part of that diversion thing that we talked about would be within their 21-day window, but are not actually homeless yet? Or are these just?
These would all be people who would be homeless, because these would all be people that are enrolled in transitional housing, emergency shelter, street outreach, or in a rapid rehousing project.
So
Without a move-in date.
There would be no diversion intervention possible for any of these 293.
I mean, there could be some diversion, you know, if you have that conversation in those settings. Yes.
So the hope would be that many of these people, well, it's hard to say, right? But at least one idea would be some of some of these folks are at emergency shelters right now. And those, and we would hope the emergency shelters are continuing to reassess, for that, and maybe they might come back off the list. I would say that, Eric and Tracy, like we've been in conversation this week, and just in terms of, this is another piece of work that we as a governance board have to deal with, and as part of our work is me and both John and I, manage contracts for some of the different, homeless service providers, and our rapid rehousers have come to us because they've been slow to spending the funds, and they've cited that they have not been able to spend their funds because they haven't, in many cases, they haven't gotten appropriate referrals from our by name list, which is something that we're working to kind of correct. And so I think there are multiple kind of like things that we need to look at, but right now our by name list for our back-end services, primarily rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and these vouchers, they're not running smoothly, and we're probably going to need to work on providing some guidance and some policy around that, and the partnership is likely going to have to kind of implement some different kind of tweaks and changes around that. So that's another piece of the work that we're going to have to do. One of the things that I want to point out, just because I'm sorry to over talk today, but like I feel like it's important that it's only 70 people have VI-SPDAT scores out of the 293. The VI-SPDAT score is the COC locally approved way that we prioritize people for back-end services. I'm not saying that VI-SPDAT is a great tool, and it might be our community's need to replace that tool, but it's a tool that we currently have, and those only 70 people are actually in line to get all the back-end services that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I would just,
To that point, you gonna bring up this, but that's the difference? The one in Clarity and the one we're using?
oh, no, well, the 3 is the most recent one that OraCode has released, and so that's the one that has been uploaded into Clarity, and so that's the one that we're looking at. What I was going to bring up as far as the 70, some of those people have already been matched and are already working with a rapid rehousing provider. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there's 70 people. It just means that that's how many VI-SPDAT scores are in Clarity, are on my by name list.
And I will say this, because I don't know if this conversation is going to solve the issue today, but I was talking with Vanessa at the county, and what Vanessa, I think is going to, I just want to kind of put it out there. In the April meeting, we'll have an official proposal to the board to create a work group about a new tool for prioritization. If the board would vote on creating a work group of community members with homelessness providers to help develop that tool. So that's not, I'm not doing that now. This isn't the proposal now, but that is something that's in discussion, because we do recognize that as a community, we need a new way of prioritizing. Because the VI-SPDAT, if I am receiving a VI-SPDAT from all of y'all, I would have multiple different scores. And so we want something that is, I'm getting prioritized correctly regardless of who's giving the assessment.
And those scores can also determine whether or not Eric is eligible for rapid rehousing, or I have to refer him to permanent supportive housing. And that could be, yeah.
So as a community, do we need to vote to change to the 3? I think it's some of the questions in the emails that were coming through from other people, like, is that because we voted to use the current one that we use, the 2, right? So do we need to vote to use the 3 as a membership, or is that just something that kind of just changes as they
Where can you send me where you see, because this is something that
Yeah, because we couldn't find
I could not
anything.
find any documentational vote on where we said this SPDAT is the one.
The 2 over the 3.
If you have that, please let us know, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna be transparent, I don't have that.
You mean like a version versus
Or this is our community standard. Like, this is what we as a community said is our community standard.
As the version.
As the version of the VI-SPDAT.
It's been there, it's just been that way. So
Okay.
it was said that the community decided on this prioritization tool, So I was just asking, pretty much because of the communications in our, case conference and email chain, like, is that something that needs to be revisited? I know we're talking about changing it, but the one in Clarity is not the one that we have been using. So I was just curious as if
I mean,
that's.
my recollection is that we chose to use this tool, even back in version 1, and so we've just been using the most recent version of the tool. So I don't think that there's been a very specific, we like this version versus.
So we just like this tool, and then as the new version comes in, we have.
Just implement it. As an HMIS perspective, that's what we've been doing, and we've been implementing the most recent one that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, we got that. Yeah.
I'll say that the version 3 is supposed to be more, I mean, it's still a flawed tool, but they've made some tweaks to it to include more LGBTQ and gender identities to be more inclusive as far as that stuff goes.
I do have one more comment. Part of that, the 293 is like all referrals to shelters as well, right? They would go on the by name list until they're enrolled.
So I pull them in when I do some of my reporting and stuff for certain statistics, but on this, for my actual by name list, and then on this is only after they are enrolled.
So in street outreach or shelter, right?
Street outreach, shelter, transitional housing, and rapid rehousing without a housing move-in date.
At this point, only having 70 BPS, but that's for 293 enrolled people.
And like I said, a lot of those are probably.
Or even only having 293 households that are prioritized.
Actually.
Versus the 190 open referrals I had for shelter.
Well, let's just say you have all the folks at your shelter and all the folks
referred to it.
who have been referred, you might imagine that at least 40% are gonna take the VIAS for that and get prioritized, is my guess. At least 40% for rapid rehousing, right? I just feel like that those numbers are extremely low, and what I know is that John has dollars in the bank that haven't been spent for rapid rehousing. And we went to this meeting in the fall, and we were told specifically that we needed 3 rapid rehousing vouchers for every 1 shelter bed we have. We don't have that because we can't, because we don't have the referrals to have that. Much less find that, I think we could find the money to provide this intervention, which we know is a best practice and is the most economic practice and is the most humane practice. But we're not moving on this. And so we have to work. I feel passionately that we have to work together to unclog these back-end services.
And the partnership, I know Tracy and myself, we know there's gaps too. One, you're not being pulled on this list unless you're enrolled in one of the programs. Well, what if you don't want to be in the program but you still need housing? How do you get housed? 2, you're exiting from a shelter street outreach to a homelessness destination. How do you get housed? Because then you're not being pulled on this list, So we do see that there's gaps. And so we would like the board's help with maybe a work group and the community to help cover those gaps as well. So we can pull in every single person who we can catch that is recognizable for needing housing. Because we want a comprehensive list and a comprehensive way to make sure that this person at the very top of the list is the most in need in our community for housing and moving on from there.
Well, and it is tricky because it's a national best practice also to not do the VIAS for that until after 14 days of homelessness, because typically they'll self-resolve national statistics with it. But anyways, so I do think it is tricky between identifying when they're first becoming homeless, like any kind of open referral, to when they actually need a housing intervention with it. Because I would say I have 190 open referrals, but I'll call through 5 or 6 of them before I get someone who's still in need by the time
and that 14 days is good. It allows for rapid exits and it allows, a VIAS for that score day 1 to shelter is going to be different than day 14.
But
Mhm.
I might challenge that, if you're waiting 2 weeks to get a phone call about, do you still want shelter, might you have self-resolved in those days, that the 2 weeks before they called?
But isn't that like part of what they account for though, too, like that, if they can self-resolve in those 2 weeks while you're waiting?
I question whether or not, once we finally get to you from a shelter perspective, I think we should likely go ahead and administer
That's true.
the
too.
assessment. Now, but when we were taking in folks every day on a daily basis, when they presented, I completely think waiting for the self-resolve made perfect sense.
I agree with you.
I think our community's kind of in a different phase now.
Yeah, definitely for us, that's when she was doing the NAEH stuff for self-resolve for our shelter, I was like, we have very few people who just leave after they come to the shelter, so she was like 60%.
Speak on the lived experience we had.
Yes.
It's interesting hearing you guys say what you're saying. I'm like, wow. But, when I was on the list, I wasn't on one list.
Mhm.
And when I finally found a place that accepted me in my homelessness, then I was able to call back every place that I was on the list. I called the Salvation Army back and told them I didn't no longer need to be on the list. I called this agency back and told them I no longer needed to be on the list. So I opened up a space for the next year. So I don't know if you guys are looking at it from your perspective versus my perspective. And maybe it needs to be looked at a little bit different.
Sure.
Because when you're in it, it's totally different.
No, if I can be honest, your perspective means more than any of our
I'm like,
perspectives.
okay, you're thinking that way,
No.
and we're homeless, we're not thinking
Yeah.
that way. So we're like digging everywhere. It's like the hub, tell me your list. So I had 28, I saved my paper with all the lists that I had, and I was calling them every day until I found the place because I had a child at that time. But if I was to find myself homeless now, it'd be different. I would approach homelessness different because it's just me. But at the time when I had a child, I wanted to know all of the 20, I was calling all 28 agencies. And the first one that opened up for me, that was the one that I was going to accept. So, I'm not saying you're wrong about your thinking. I'm just saying, think about it more than one way.
Sure.
But it's interesting sitting here, learning all of this. That's why I want to know about the 28 agencies and why isn't there 28 agencies on this? And why can't we see what they did in the last 30 days?
Yeah, so these are out of the agencies, these are the ones for, the housing projects, shelter, transitional housing, and street outreach.
Yes.
We have some service-only agencies as well that create that list.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. The reason why I'm saying that, okay, if we're working with 28 agencies, when they call the hub is supposed to know where to connect them out of the 28 agencies. You understand where I'm from?
Yeah, absolutely, based on your needs, correct?
Mhm.
Yep. And we do have a process that probably can be, tweaked, but I
And
believe.
this is really good. This is really good, my name list, because I don't know, I love color and all that, so you
Me
got
too.
my attention. And, so I'm just saying, I'm looking at how we can resolve some issues when we call the hub, okay, because our mindset is not like, I'm doing my job. We're hunting for shelter. So that's just my.
And I really appreciate you slowing us down.
Yeah, for real.
So and at least trying to be clear, like, if the access of sends me to a shelter and I finally get into a shelter, one of the shelter's responsibilities is to see if there are other programs that I might qualify for.
Yes.
And so some of those programs that I might qualify for would be these rapid rehousing, extra kind of dollars and assistance that the shelter doesn't really have custody over, but other programs have custody over. And so I want, as a shelter, I want my clients to have access to all those services. And so our community has decided that the way we prioritize people for those services of which we have limited dollars is to do these assessments. And so I was trying to make a point that our community is not doing these assessments. And so people who are staying at those shelters aren't automatically getting screened in for these extra services. So until we do our jobs, or until we kind of fix the gaps in our system, we can't move as fast as we want to move. And you would recognize that we want to move as fast as we can move, right? Because everybody depends on it.
Yes, out of your 28 agencies, do you have the carrying place as one of your agencies?
They are,
Okay.
and they're up there.
I'm not trying to target anyone, but that was the, agency that accepted me in the program. I'm still part of the program. They offered me everything under the sun. And, I'm just trying to figure out, I want to know what the other 28 agencies are offering compared to, not compared to in a negative way, just seeing how we can all build a community together that's gonna, attack homelessness
Absolutely.
the way they are.
Robin, would you be able to put together that list of all the agencies and the services, like Salvation Army Shelter?
We all do things better.
Yeah.
One of the things that Carrying Place does effectively is they do short term. And they get people off the street and get them in quickly, but as I understand it, their program, their housing piece is only 4 months.
Oh, no, let me tell you about Carrying Place.
No, well, we worked with Carrying Place, and they were moving people out after 4 months, so that's why we connected with them.
But they were moving them out, let me see, how can I say
I didn't
it?
know if that was everybody or not, but.
They were moving us out, not out. We were out and we were able to come back and we were able to be educated. We were able to receive food for a year. I mean, all of those things.
Well, when I say moving out of housing, at least that's how I understood how that works.
Yes.
To connect it to more permanent housing.
Yes, that was 2 years ago, but now the program is, now extending their services for, a year. And I'm saying that because I can speak from experience, and I'm hoping, this is my heartbeat, and I hope you guys know that I'm here because I believe we are all here to work together and build something great for Wake County. My goal is for Wake County to stand out amongst any county in the world.
Yeah, right.
So, out of the 28 agencies that we have, I just want to know personally how I can review and see what you guys are offering and how we can compare and build together, like the by name list, this, I don't know. what
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. That is what this board is here is to do, exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
Is we want to be the lead agency in the state, or the lead COC in the state.
One of those are gonna not be quiet, but I do recommend that maybe the data review committee or someone or the partnership staff do review out of those 292 and only that 70 BI SPDATs are completed, which agencies those are, and maybe doing more training at the agency specific level to make sure the BI SPDATs are being.
Yeah, I mean, even with the dashboards, you can see that.
Great.
Yeah, just.
That's a good thing.
Thank you. Question. I just want to add some context to these numbers. We talked about
the
this in our shelter training and how specifically the drop shelter was gonna skew our data because we are doing entries and exits on a nightly basis, which is gonna lower our length of stay skewed, and it's gonna raise our exits to, homelessness skewed. So I just wanna add that context for these numbers, because looking at this data, it looks like we have, it looks bad.
I completely forgot about that too, Decorba. I'm sorry. Yeah,
okay.
I didn't add that little context in there, but yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, White Flag and those emergency.
White Flag wouldn't be on here, but the healing transition.
And we've had up to 113 gentlemen at a night,
Ah.
right? No less than 60. So I just contacts.
Okay.
You
That's
see
in
those
30
exit
days.
numbers. Is that every day you're having that?
Yes. Yes.
So is,
So if that doesn't show the need in the community,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what does. So
Yeah.
it's just like,
For
like,
sure.
Ms. Melody just said, people are searching and hunting for shelter. And I think those numbers speak for themselves on that hunt, and that the need for that service.
Interesting.
I have a question just later related to that, but I wonder if using the day shelter module instead of a shelter bed module might not pull that data into the bed nights.
Good.
Just a thought for later exploration, sorry.
I think it's important.
I think they have a separate program though, right, for the overflow, you do overflow, whatever, so they, when you're pulling the data, you could just cancel out that.
I can. I'll make sure. Is it labeled in Clarity as overflow?
There's 3 programs, so the women's night by night is, overflow. The men's night by night is men's drop and shelter.
Okay.
So there's 3 programs.
Okay,
I
yeah,
do
I'll make
wanna,
sure they're not on
I
there.
want to be respectful on time. We did have this at an hour and 15 minutes, and we're pushing an hour and a half right now. So I don't want there to be anybody that feels uncomfortable that they have to leave. This has been great conversations. I think this just highlights what as a board we need to do. I'm gonna quickly go through the next maybe 10 slides, and see if there's anybody that'd like to give updates. The first one, I don't have any slides for them, just kind of the name of them, and then we're gonna call it a meeting. But LEU, is Vanessa, are you still on the call? Do you have any updates for LEU? Verbal updates you want to give? Okay, she might be off the call.
Yeah.
Coordinated Access System, or Coordinated Access Committee, I think there's, right now we're meeting with Bitbugs for community queue process. That's a 9-month to a year process. There is going to need to be governance board engagement on this committee, on focus of this committee, on what they need to focus on. Because right now, it doesn't have a chair, and the charter work for this committee, just right now is non-existent. So if that is still an active committee that the governing board finds that we need to, during our board retreat session, we can kind of maybe talk about this committee a little bit. That advisory committee, have applications for that. We'll be voting on the chair. There's currently not a chair for that committee. So that one is still meeting regularly, and there will be a vote for a chair on that committee. Nominations committee, do you have any updates you want to share? I don't put you on the spot.
No, I mean, the last thing we talked about is making sure that we communicate to the committees, the people who have shared interest in their committees, because we have failed in doing that.
Okay. So nominations committee will be sending out communication as well to other committees, especially applicants and everything. Homeless Emergency Response Committee, is there any representation?
Me,
Do you have any quick updates you'd like to share?
I think we've had a bunch of cancellations and movements.
Do we have a date on when they're meeting, like a date and time? Because I can
Their
resend that out.
plan is to consistently meet, well, and I don't know who's on I don't know if like Vance is there, he might be able to share, but the plan is to meet from 1 to 2 before the COC membership meetings regularly, now that we're moving out of some of the colder weather.
Okay.
I think that was the plan. But last meeting got canceled because he was in the middle of planning for like 3 days of white flag and there was a bunch going on, so.
The April 17th is the next COC membership. It was, I think Easter Monday was when it was scheduled for the 10th, and we just pushed it back a week. For that one. EHVs, Trace, can you do it really quick?
Same thing. I gotta, this is what we have as far as our EHVs go. This is also the EHVs and the fair share. This is currently what we have on that we're tracking. So these are people who have either been matched or referred for an EHV or a fair share, or currently have a voucher.
All right, you want to roll on a street outreach really quick?
Street outreach, we didn't have a meeting last month, so this month was a lot of catching up from what was missed last month. We discussed a few new encampments. We also talked about some potential hotspots that we may be wanting to keep an eye on. And also we had Officer Peterson from the airport who gave a really good update. And thank you to Corba for reaching out and working with him on making sure that men that are at the airport are using that drop-in shelter.
Okay. Alrighty, y'all, that's it. Thank y'all. Our next meeting is, April 27th. In the meantime, a doodle poll will go out about the COC board retreat / onboarding, for next big work session for prioritizing. And, yeah, if you have any questions, please email myself or the COC at partnershipwake.org. I will be honest, I'll probably see it faster if you email myself first. Yes, ma'am.
The 28 agencies, can you, are you gonna send out an email with the 28 agencies that, we are actually working with and whatever?
Yes, I'm gonna email these slides, and I'll email that, Robin, if you don't mind making that list.
Yeah.
And then,
I mean, are you talking like agencies that you make?
like, you want like food pantries and everything, like anybody?
Everybody.
Perfect.
Yes, and,
Okay. Yeah, thank y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Eric, you just said this earlier, but how long